Tommie Runz, my man, a long time in the making. A privilege to welcome you onto the podcast. How you doing this afternoon?
Man, I'm doing great. I almost feel like it's not even afternoon. I'm like, but it is. Yeah, I'm having a good day so far. I'm really happy to be on the pod. Thanks for having me.
1 p.m. We're recording this at 1 p.m. I feel like 1 p.m. is it's like close enough to the morning, but also new enough in the afternoon where it is kind
Yeah,
of that weird feeling. I have to ask you, are you a napper? I feel like this part of the day is where I start to feel tired, especially if I had a morning run.
man. No, I mean, I always feel like I wish I was one, and I always like think about it. Like, man, right now would be a great time for one, but I just never make it happen. You know what I mean?
I think a lot of people, rightfully so, I'm a proponent of it, are big like people in the running community, massively into their sleep. You know, they wear
Hmm.
Whoop, they wear their
Yeah.
smartwatch or their Aura ring. How into sleep are you? Are you the type of guy that sleeps 5 hours and rips a track workout the next day just fine?
Yeah, that I feel like that's me, but I don't know if that's a positive thing. Like I feel like it
That's
catches
what
up
I mean.
somewhere. But I mean, like, I'll wear a watch. I've dabbled in Whoop or whatever, but it seems like the only reason why I had those is to make myself feel bad about it. Like because I would never change it. I'd be like, wow, yeah, I need more sleep. And then just not get any more sleep. So like my thing with naps is like whenever I actually take them, like, and I finally like need one enough. I take like it ends up being like 2 hours or
Really?
something. And then I wake up feeling like I'm in like on another planet. Like you know how you see those movies. I'm into kind of sci-fi ish.
Uh-huh.
Um and you know those movies when like especially lately where they're like kind of be more realistic, like it takes hundreds of years to get to like that next inhabitable planet, and then they like wake up out the chambers. And like in the older movies they'd wake up and they'd be like like from a fresh nap, but then there's these newer ones they'll wake up and they're like just wrecked. That's me after a 2 hour 2 or 3 hour nap because I just feel like I don't know where I am, I don't know how long I've been asleep, am I late for my school bus, I don't know.
I'm a 20-minute power napper, so I've never come
Okay.
across that issue. And I've found when I used to take naps, it'd be like that hour and a half, hour nap.
Yeah.
And I felt exactly how you described. And when I made them 20, 25 minutes, I felt I got the benefits of a nap and I didn't wake up groggy. So you
Okay,
gotta
so
you gotta hop
so
on the power nap train.
so it's like, you said, so you set an alarm?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I do.
And like, how do you feel when you wake up? Do you feel like you just close your eyes for a second?
Uh, it depends. So generally, I only take them when I'm pretty tired, and so
Hmm.
generally I fall asleep right away. The times I fall asleep right away, I wake up so refreshed, and it feels like an hour passed, but it's only like 25 minutes, 20 minutes.
All right, I'll try.
But
I'll
there
try.
are some people I know that it takes them a little while to fall asleep. If it takes you 10 minutes to fall asleep, a 25-minute nap, like it's like that's when it probably feels like you just closed your eyes. But I've also seen benefit even if I don't sleep and just shut my eyes for 20 minutes. It seems to like reset my brain. Especially you know this, like on a computer, on your phone, respond to stuff all
Hmm.
day. To just be away from screens, close your eyes, at
Hmm.
least try to sleep. I
Try
feel like it can help. So I don't know.
tomorrow. I'll try
Tomorrow. Okay.
tomorrow.
Next
I
next
think I
time we
think
do
I
a
think
podcast, you'll
Yeah, I
you'll
think I missed.
report
I think
back.
yeah, I think I'll miss. Yeah, yeah. Hopefully, I do well enough on this pod to be invited back one day. And I feel like I'd love to report back that I've like been able to kind of nail that down because I feel like I know that people say like don't sleep for 2 hours because you get into like another like level of sleep or whatever, the sleep stages and stuff like that. And if you get
Yep.
into the wrong one and you wake up from it, it feels like you're just lost in life. So yeah, I'm gonna try the 20 30 and see what happens.
I saw you were mentioning sci-fi movies and kind of that like the chamber that
Hmm.
happens in a lot of them. I saw an Instagram reel last week and it was, have you seen the movie Inception?
Yeah, 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 yeah,
Okay, amazing movie, probably one of my favorites.
yeah.
And
Really
it
good
was it
movie.
was the clip of Leonardo DiCaprio, or Dom Cobb in the movie as he's called, the scene when he gets back on the flight home and he's waking up
Hmm.
and everything's over, and the
Hmm.
caption was like in quotes, "Wake up, bro! It's 2016," and he's like all
Oh.
confused. And honestly, man, that hit so hard. I was like, man, if that actually happened to me and I woke up and someone was like, "Yo, it's 2016," and I was like, "The past 8 years have been a dream," I'd be
Yeah,
like, "Gosh dang it." I mean, it's been
yeah,
such a
man.
good past 8
Oh,
years, and I know your story lines up with that pretty well. What would be
yeah.
your thoughts if you woke up and,
If I woke up
this
and it
was
was
all a
still
dream?
2016, oh man. I guess, like, yeah, I guess it would be like, dang it, but then at the same time, it'd be like, okay, like we can start this journey sooner, because like I got sober in 2017, so like I'd be
That's what I mean.
like, yeah, like it would be nice to like that would, I mean, it would it would suck to have to do it all over again, but like it would be like, okay, I could get a jump start on this, I kind of can see what the future's like. I kind of joked because I was in Japan a few weeks ago, and the flight back took off at 4:30 p.m. on a Monday in Tokyo, and then it landed at 2:30 p.m. in Detroit, same day. So
Oh, weird.
I kind of time traveled a little bit. So like I kind of joked and said like, yeah, I know what the future looks like, guys. So stick with me. But it would kind of be like a hint at the future. So I'd be okay with that, I think.
Speaking of um like doing the journey all over again, I've heard that like successful people, how they get successful is they're optimistic to a delusional point, and
Mm,
they almost think it's going to be way easier than it actually is, but because they're optimistic they just keep doing it. And I've heard a
mm,
few like Fortune 500 CEOs say that if they had to do it over again they wouldn't, because they were so blindsided to the fact of how much work would actually go into it. For you, if we went back to 2016, like with you and your media and all the things you've done and all the hard work you put into your platform and personal brand, would you do it all over again with how hard it is?
well, yeah, I would for sure because, I guess I look at it a little differently. Well, I mean, I wouldn't have like said that I'm successful at this or whatever, but,
I will.
um,
You're successful at
okay, I appreciate it. Thank you.
it.
I can take the compliment. But like, I think that I do some of the things that I do a slightly different than someone that is like building like a career from like influencing or content creation or podcasting. I take it. uh, I do it because I like doing the stuff that I've found myself to do. And I have a day job too, so I kind of lean on this as more of like a way to explore and challenge myself and hopefully create content and tell a story that's valuable for people. So I would absolutely do it over again. I think that like I think I would change a couple things here and there, like along the way, but it literally would just be figuring out how to do it sooner, you know? Um, because like, I mean, my journey hasn't been difficult in the sense of like this journey hasn't been difficult. Like my life before all of this was difficult. Life in general is like still difficult, like the day to day stuff. But I wouldn't say like, you know, starting like a podcast or running or Instagram. I mean, this isn't difficult, not to me. I mean, but I'm not looking at it like I'm trying to build a. I'm just trying to like create value. And be of value to people. So I'd do it again, and I would just try to do it better.
When someone comes across your page, comes across your content, how do you want them to leave feeling?
Um, I'd love to like if somebody went to my Instagram. I'd love for them to want to follow the rest of it. You know, I mean, it sounds silly, but like I'd love for them to hit the follow button after like a couple reels of watching because they feel like I am like them in a way, or one of my biggest parts of like me sharing my story is that I want people to feel like they're not alone in whatever journey that they're in. Like you may not have had the same experiences as me, but I've been through in enough different parts of life that if I share my side of it, I hope that it's like even if things don't align perfectly, it's just like, oh, okay, well, if he was able to kind of get through that part of it and address it in this like healthy way, or can talk about the unhealthy ways he dealt with certain issues, then he's kind of like assured me that out of all the other billion people on the world in the planet, at least there's one that's kind of like me in that aspect. So hopefully people leave feeling that they want to follow the rest of my journey, but then also feeling like they're not alone.
Let's go back to 1993. Tommy,
Oh
age
my
8.
gosh. Oh my gosh, you just no. So now you want me to? So you're trying to get people to cry on your show. I get it. I get it. Yeah. So what's the question about 1993?
Take me back to 1993, age 8, relationship with your father. What happens?
Okay. So yeah, in 1993, um, my dad passed in February 1993 of a stroke, and at the time I wasn't living with him. So like my mother and him had separated, so I hadn't been like living with him for a couple years at that point. But so like our relationship was good. I mean, I don't remember a bunch, because I mean I was pretty young, and so I don't remember a lot about him other than the fact that like I know he was a good dad. I know that he loved us, and stuff like that, and there was no issue there. But it was just, I mean, it was like obviously a sad moment to lose your dad at 8, but it was like, so 93 for me was more about like probably more than anything. Now that I look back at it, it was more about like me and my sister and my mom. It was more about like what's next for us as a family and how do we figure this out. But the relationship, from what I remember, was great. And I looked up to him obviously, and he was a cool guy, and it was just a terrible loss obviously for a family.
How did you handle the loss at the age of 8? I feel like at that age, I mean, I think the stat is your brain isn't fully developed until age
Yeah.
25. So whatever it would be at age 8, like I feel like 8-year-olds aren't really capable of
Yeah.
handling that kind of crippling news and life event. How did you kind of cope with that emotional,
Well,
life altering event?
I don't really. I mean, you're right though. I mean, I don't think I knew that part of it, like what you just said, until much later in life. Because I always thought, because I have like maybe 3 or 4 like actual memories of him, like of us being in the same space. So I can't, and even in those moments, for a really long time, it bothered me because like I can't visualize his face. Like I can't, in memory form, like all the memory I have of his like actual like face is like from pictures. you know because, and I thought that was really strange, and I thought it was like, God hated me and took this part of my memory away. But like I talked to a therapist, which a lot of the times too, the more I share, the more I like want people to understand, like it's, everybody needs therapy at some point, and that's fine. There should be no stigma related to that, and it almost should be uh frowned upon that you haven't like like explored, your journey with mental health. Like that should be more concerning for people than like someone talking to someone about, things that they think or feel and all that. But a therapist like told me once, like, well, yeah, it makes sense that you can't see that because all my memories are very 8-year-old level, or not even 8, like really, because my memories really with him are probably 7 years old, 6 years old, 5 years old, 4, so like the what I remember seeing is at my eye level, and the things that I remember in all those moments were like stuff where like what I was looking at, and it wasn't him. It was like what was happening around us at that moment. Um, but so like I dealt with it like in a way, I guess, that you would think like, any 8-year-old probably would, is kind of not really understand what's happening. Know that it's a really big deal and it sucks. Fully understand death at that point, but I just kind of processed it how I needed to kind of process it to keep going, and then I feel like since it was like, then it was me, my mom, and my sister. It was like, how do we figure this out? And I don't know if I processed it like that, like in those words, but I feel like how I moved after that point was trying to assist with that, with those moments. So like how do we figure this out? I know my mom is, everyone's hurt around me. I'm hurt too, but like what do we do now,
Age 17 is, if I'm not mistaken, when you first have a drink of alcohol. Take
hmm
me through how that radically transformed your life.
Man, so 17, I was a senior in high school, first drink, uh was in school, ironically. I don't even know, like now that I just about to say it, like I don't know if I would have had what the relationship would have been with alcohol if I had had that same drink outside of school. But like in school, I was always, in my view of it, I wasn't cool. I was, funny-ish and nice to people, and so people knew me and they knew my, they would talk to me and stuff like that. But for some reason, from before that point, I always felt like I was a little outside. I was I always felt like I was close enough to things, but I wasn't like in the in crowd, I guess, and that can play a role like on how like a teenager, with maybe some issues with like loss and hurt and stuff like that, and maybe judging themselves for things that definitely played a role in my life, and thinking that maybe I'm just, and I was very cautious or in aware of what I thought other people were thinking of me, so having that first like drink in school, um soon as like that feeling, like I guess hit, was like, oh wow, I don't care as much about what people think about me, and like the inhibitions were lifted, in that moment, and I felt like kind of free of like that like prison that a lot of us put ourselves in about like what other people are thinking and doing, and um a lot of adults to this day don't start doing a thing because they're concerned about what other people are going to think about that. And that immediately, like that alcohol moment for me, that first drink was like freeing for me, I guess, and so then I just kind of like went down that road and stayed there for a very long time. And just like anything, probably not any destructive behavior, like in the beginning, typically it's like, it's a little fun, like you're a teenager, then your early 20s, everything's kind of fun, and then, but when you realize like with like if you're not able to stop, especially like when it comes to like addiction, early it's cool, but then after you start getting into like more aggressive situations and more like realizing that you like rely on this to live, so to speak, and you're addicted to things, it gets to be kind of unfun because it's more of it's more of like a shackle as opposed to like that freedom that you felt in the beginning. And it starts to take physical toll on you. You start to see the effects of your negative behaviors. So that relationship went from fun and party to like, this is who I am, to like, this is depressing, you know?
A lot of high schoolers listen to this podcast, so a bunch of 17-year-olds.
Oh,
I would
really?
love to
Okay. I didn't even think
yeah,
about that.
I would
All right.
love
Don't do it,
to
kids. I'm just playing.
well, that's kind of what I'm gonna ask you.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
you mentioned it wasn't just, you know, drinking alcohol to drink alcohol. It was masking something you felt. Like,
Yeah.
it was in your feelings, like a way in which to handle the emotion of how people perceived you and your different
Hmm.
how you interacted at school and with your peers and whatnot. And I feel like if you can engage in different things like running, like sports,
Hmm.
whatever it might be, it can set you on the right path. And kids never even have to,
Yeah.
have that thought of, oh, this masks how I feel. Could you speak to that, maybe a 17-year-old listening, of, how to handle that emotion you felt in a different way than
Yeah.
alcohol?
Well, no, I don't even, I guess like, cause I mean, I have a 16-year-old daughter, so it's like, I guess I have to have these conversations anyway, but it's like, if first off, it's like normal. Whatever, like some of the feelings that I thought were that it was just me, like those feelings like of being like inadequate or like worried about what people are thinking about you or all that stuff, like that's all normal. And even like the coolest kids in the school have the same thoughts as us, like that's it's just real. It's just that it depends on like how you handle the situations. So it's in everything that like I've done in my life that I thought was the way to do it the coolest way, always turned out to be a negative thing. Like it's, like the thing that like that is the easier quick fix of like, how do I handle my emotion right now? The easier way will always end you in, it just never turns out well. So like, I guess I would tell myself to tell to my 17-year-old self, like, hey bro, like you're not alone. What you're feeling is normal. um Find a way to deal with this in a way that you'll be proud of, you know because it's also to be all said and done, I'm not proud of anything that I did from 17 to 32, you know? Even if I was able to like do some positive things in life, which I was never able to like give myself credit for them because I knew that I behind closed doors I was this like terrible person that drank a lot, you know? So just take a minute and realize like number one, you're not alone. Number two, there's a much better way to handle those feelings. That you won't regret, because that's another thing is like like as parents or adults and stuff we always talk about, oh, 10 years from now you're not gonna, it's hard to see that at 17, like, okay, at 27 I'm gonna be mad about this drink. That's not saying it like that, but these little decisions that we make, you know turn us in, slowly but surely turn us into a person that we are proud of and love, or a person that we are less than proud of and have regrets, and regrets are just a terrible thing to have to carry through, the next 5, 10 years. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I love that. One of the biggest reframing mindsets for me for any subject in life has been, and I forget where I read this or heard this, but they said, "What would you tell your future son to do?" Put that framework in any
Yeah.
situation. It's so
Yeah.
good. Because
Yeah. I
even
mean,
like even if you want to do something, if you have that mindset and you ask yourself that question and you're honest about what you would actually tell them, I think 9 times out of 10, it's actually pretty easy to make the decision. Even with super simple stuff. Like if you lack motivation one day, we were talking about weather before the podcast. The weather
mhm.
sucks outside and it's snowing, but you got 7 miles on the calendar and you know you should do it, but you're like sitting on the couch going through Instagram reels, and man, I don't want to do it, and you ask yourself, what would I tell my son to do? It's like, boom, you come up with some crazy inspirational,
Right.
quote or piece of
100%.
guidance. And it's like, oh, okay, I'm going to do what I would tell my future son to do. And I think taking yourself out of that kind of first person, or another reframing I've heard for like injuries and whatnot, is like, what would you advise your friend on this? Makes
Hmm.
it so much easier to see clearly. We're just so bad at the conversations we have with ourselves.
Oh yeah, conversations we have with ourselves is, I mean, that's all the problem. Like it's not even. I was gonna say it's part of the, like it can be a part of the solution. And I've heard also people, like if you look up to certain people, you know, you look at their accomplishments and what they've done in their lives or something like that, and it inspires you. Sometimes it's also cool to like ask yourself what that person would do, you know like what would they do in this situation, and hopefully like that person is a positive role model in your life. But like it's,
That's a scary road to go down
does
if you
this
ask
get,
yourself, what
yeah,
would
yeah.
Goggins do?
I mean,
We're
yeah, yeah.
waking up at 2 a.m.
Yeah.
tonight, Tommy,
Yeah, what
ripping
would
50
Goggins
miles.
do doing this 50 miler? And then like I think Goggins is like a funny example of that, because a lot of people like will talk about him in that aspect of like, he ran with like 17 broken feet. We only got two, but whatever, we figured it out. But I think like what I take away from, he's definitely a caricature of like what I hope to like the underlying story of my life to kind of be, is like I said I was going to do something. So I did it. And I, even though I didn't want to, even though I was, I had this issue or that issue or whatever it is, I woke up every day and I did a little bit to continue down that road of like accomplishing that thing that I said I wanted to accomplish, or deciding that, like, you know what, this is the type of person I am. I'm a motivational person, right? That's what you want to say you are. Then you have to continue to every day do things that make you that motivational type person. Or I'm a trustworthy person. There's so many decisions that like we can make all throughout a day that would slowly chip away at that narrative, unless we make active decisions every day, all day, to lean towards the, okay, no, I'm gonna tell the truth in this moment. I'm gonna be trustworthy, and when no one's around, I'm gonna do the things that make me a trustworthy person. So I like the whole Goggins thing. Like, no, I don't think you should push the envelope and just do exactly as he's done. But one thing you can't say about him that we know of is that he's not a man of his word. You know, and he does it even to a fault, right? But I'd love to be a trustworthy, caring, um, motivated person to a fault, you know?
Yeah, the most important promises are the ones we make to ourselves. And
Hmm.
it's because if you don't do it, you live with it for the rest of the day. Like if you're like, I'm gonna wake up tomorrow and run 10 miles, no one else will know if you don't tell them, but you'll know,
Hmm.
and it'll eat at you for the rest of the day. And one
And
of
you're
my
gonna you're
favorite
gonna you're gonna remember in that race your goal race. You're gonna remember that at the worst moment, like, dang, I didn't do all the miles I said I was gonna do. You
Yep.
know?
Yep. One of my favorite quotes that hits so deeply hard is they say true hell is when the person you are meets the person you could have been.
Ooh, yeah, I don't like that thought, bro.
But
No, yeah.
it's kind of, I mean, it's got to be kind of refreshing to you thinking back to that 17-year-old self, or like even thinking if you spent a day with your dad, if he came back for a day,
Hmm.
like the person you've become, you know, since age 17, since the first drop of alcohol. Like statistically, if you look at people who are alcoholics and go down that road and what they end up becoming and how they never get out of it
Hmm.
compared to the journey and trajectory you're on, I mean, it's kind of got to feel inspiring for the rest of your years on life of like, man, it's
Yeah.
crazy how much I've turned my life around.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, I mean, it's it's I never really thought about like statistic wise, but statistically, like, I shouldn't be here to like, not even just like, oh, not on the podcast with you talking about running and life and stuff like that. But statistically, I shouldn't be here like alive. And for a long time, I didn't think I was going to be, even though I kept making decisions that led me towards that road of not being here anymore. So like statistically, like and that's why I would 100% do this part of the journey over again 100 times if I had to, because I know that the chances of me starting over and repeating the same process as I did from 17, the chances of me still being in front of you today are so low, it's ridiculous. So I feel like because of all that and because of like the blessings of God of me even still being in this position, and having a chance to be on your podcast to talk about stuff like this, and maybe someone listens to it and says, you know what, like that I feel inspired to go do my best at something. Um, I know is a gift and a blessing, and I have to continue to do it, and I have to talk about. Um, I have to share my story because if someone hears it. I used to think it was about being fast, to be honest. Like when I first started running, I mean, I just started running in 2018, and I'm not fast in comparison to like you or some of the people that probably listen to this podcast. But when it comes to like average runner speed for like a marathon, like I thought it.
248's pretty fast, my guy.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I hate to do it. It was 2:46:59, but
246.
um,
Whew.
yeah. I mean, but that's like but in the grand scheme of things, that's not fast, really. I mean, because there's someone that ran 2 hours and 35 seconds. So that's like it's a big difference. But I used to think it was all about that endeavor to be faster. And I thought that's why people were following me and that's why people liked me. But then I sat on a panel in Boston with some pretty famous professional athletes, and I was on the panel with them, not knowing why I was there, and shared some of my story. And at the end, I tried to get out of the way because I'm figuring like, okay, they're gonna get autographs and all that. I moved out the way off to the side while they proudly stood, waiting for people to line up for them. And then like 8 people lined up to talk to me you know, and no one said, "Hey, man, you're so fast. I want to be just like you," whatever, or "Hey, you're so inspiring because you're fast." It was literally because, "Hey, I know someone that didn't survive their addiction. I know somebody that is 10 years sober that would love to meet you, or I'm sober for 6 months and you inspired me, or I'm black in the running space and didn't think that I'd ever be here," and whatever it was, like all the things that my story represented to them is what they cared about, and it wasn't about speed. you know
Yeah, I think that's so powerful. Like stories are what inspire individuals. Rarely is it time, you know.
exactly. Yeah.
If it was just about time, 246 is pretty fast to be honest, but like you wouldn't be on the podcast. If I was
Yeah, if it was
just
just about
an
time. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, it would just be like every Nike signed professional runner, you know what I mean? And sure, I
Exactly,
love having
exactly.
conversations with them, but I don't think most professional runners are relatable. Like they're relatable and it like I have a pretty young audience and it's relatable to them in the sense that in high school and college, early 20s, like you're pretty delusional about your goals and I fully support that. I think you should be. I think you need
Hmm.
to be to even come close to accomplishing them. So like the Olympic dream mindset is definitely still alive and well in a lot of people.
Hmm.
But as you get older, it's like professional runners really aren't relatable to 99% of the people who run the New York City
Yeah.
Marathon.
Yeah.
Out of the 65,000 people who line the streets, it's like how many actually can relate to Kelvin Kiptum running 4:32 average for
Hmm.
26.2 miles? They can't. But to a guy who flipped his life around and running is part of what saved him and part of what gets him out of bed every morning and how he uses it to inspire other people, like, how is that not relatable? You know what I mean?
Right. Yep. Exactly. You know, what I mean, because we all have our own version of that. You know, like, I mean, because and the one thing I said on the pod recently was just like, I there's definitely in this world there's more people that are lean towards like hurting. You know, like they're like in like their depression or thoughts or sadness or whatever it is. There's more people in that realm than we all like to talk about. You know, because we all have a thing that we're going through, no matter how old you are. Like, I mean, unless you've like somehow had the perfect life, you know what I mean? The perfect life is so ridiculous. Like that's one thing too, like that I would have told myself in high school, like, bro, like you do not know what other people are going through. And that's one thing that we think we know as when we're young is we know this guy, this person right here, they're perfect. Their family must be amazing. Like you know, like you don't know what they go home to. You don't know what they're going through in their heads, even if they look like the coolest individual that ever walked the planet, you know? And I just feel like it's our duty to like realize that sharing some of our struggles and things that we have to go through um is important because like you talk about like the pros and stuff like that that are not relatable. Some of the pros that have decided that they're going to share more of their life all of a sudden become much more relatable because like, oh wow, they didn't think they were going to finish the marathon either that day they won it, you know. And like Kelvin Kiptum, like if you the more you hear about the fact that like of his story that he had like really humble beginning, and it kind of like promoted him to not be able to go through the track thing, and he just jumped into like training with other people, and he went more straight to like the longer distances because of he didn't have the benefit of like, you know, being a young guy and being able to afford whatever that is to be able to like run with Kipchoge's group. You know, he just tagged along when he could, you know, and that's what got him to that point. But unfortunately, we didn't know him long enough to like hear that all get played out. But that's inspiring, you know, like that's relatable. Like not everybody has the money to like go move to, you know, Flagstaff and train with pros. You
Right.
know, like no, but not everybody has that opportunity. Some people do,
Yeah.
and that's great.
Just do what you got. Do with
Yeah,
what do yeah. Do
do
your
the
best
best with
with
what
what
you
you
got.
have. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
exactly. You know, and like
I
you know, and that's a high that should be talked about in high school. Like not everybody has the same, you know, make believe storytelling thing, but they make it to where they're going.
and that's why I think it's so important to tell your own story, right?
Hmm.
If the goal of life is to make the Olympics, then it's straight up, it's not fair. People are dealt different
Mm.
opportunities in life. But if the goal is to share your own story and inspire as many other human beings as possible and be a good person, you have control over that, no
You
matter what cards you're dealt. And
one
it
hundred
makes
percent.
it easier to cope with the fact that you have a bad situation with that mindset in mind of like, I've been dealt these bad cards, been injured the past 4 years. I grew up in the not most ideal family situation, financial situation, you fill in the blank. It's like makes for a better story. You know
Hmm.
what I mean?
Yeah,
Of
yeah,
course,
yeah,
not to discredit some of that stuff. Some of that stuff is real and it sucks and it's unfortunate.
yeah.
But I will say, I don't know how much you follow to this, and some followers might be mad at me for bringing this up. I'm broken at Kelvin's death, but
Hmm.
recent stuff have come out. I don't know if you've seen this about
Oh
him
no,
drinking. Oh, you haven't seen this?
no.
Oh, there are all these reports of how much he was drinking the day of his death and how it
Okay.
may have uh, played a role in the crash. And it kills more because Sammy Wanjuru. I was too young at this point to
Yeah,
follow the
I mean,
sport, but
yeah, I was too new to
similar,
running. I think when it happened. Yeah,
yeah, similar comparison. People have compared them, like ton of potential in the sport. Both
hmm,
died at a super young age, and Sammy, it was also because of alcohol, or his was like
yeah,
strictly because of alcohol. I'm pretty sure. It's like,
yeah.
man, what going back to
And
this
then you,
conversation? Why did people
yeah,
resort like Kelvin, top of the world? Like you
yeah.
said, you never know what people are going through. The
Yeah,
outsider would have been like
exactly.
everything's perfect for him.
Right. Right. And then and it's like and then we hold some of these people to like this so like a standard, like inhuman, oh, of course this person is making all the right decisions at 24 years old. Like dude, tell me at 24 I'm going to be at a world record holder, and be like on top of the world all of a sudden. Like I'm probably going to make some decisions that are strange, or I mean that would sacrifice my position. And I think that that's one of the things that that it all comes back to is like, if you knew what if somebody said like, if I knew then what I know now, like I wouldn't do this. But it's because like you see the risks of your decisions that you're making. Like at a young age, you don't see the risks of like everyone else is doing it, like, and no one had any issues or whatever. It's fine. But if you like really knew what you're risking, we wouldn't do half of the things that we do in life. If you could look ahead, like say, what's the real risk here, and I would, I'm not sure what he was doing that day or that night, but I guarantee that like the risk, um if that's the case, he was drinking and that's was the thing, then obviously I'm sure he would make a different decision if he had the opportunity to.
Let's talk about 2007, the event that kind of gets you on the path.
mm,
You become a father, you find out. How does that
mm.
change things?
Man, you did research, bro. um so 2007, I was definitely, prior to 2007, like I was in that situation of like making daily choices and decisions that like risked my freedom, um and life in general. So finding out that my girlfriend at the time was pregnant, with a girl, was like this, like kind of like an eye-opening experience where it's like, oh, like I can't live this life anymore because I need to be there for this girl, for this baby that's not here yet. So I was trying to decide and figure out a way to get back onto like the right side of life, and have a normal job, and like be safe and have more structure. And so when she got here, it was really tough, because like, for full disclosure, is it's I was like, I'll just say like I was in like living a street life, to be vague, but a street life, and it was just like dead jail type of thing. Um, and so to move from that, and try to get back into like, uh, the normal life of people who are like aren't afraid of going, that aren't risking going to jail every day. It's a tough transition to get back to like telling people that you're a trustworthy person if you haven't had like work experience for a few years, and um I was able to like work at a church, ironically, that I used to go to before. And it was just tough making ends meet because like in order to take care of like a family, like you need to have like money, you know what I mean? And it was just tough to do that without like all these other resources. So my mom was visiting and she saw that I was trying to do the right thing. And sometimes the right thing, honestly, is the hardest thing to do. And it was so tough, like, to stay away from like that urge to just like, I could do this thing and make some money really quickly, probably, or I could stay doing this, not risk my safety, be here for this family, but struggle hard. And she saw that I was trying to do that, and said, "Hey, do you want to move to Massachusetts?" She's living in Massachusetts already for her career, and she's like, "It's a totally different place. It's literally like polar opposite of where you are right now. You want to come and just try to start something new?" And I said, "Yeah," because I was just like, I was so tired of like that balance of like, I want to take care of my family, and the only way I know how to at this moment to do it now, because this baby needs formula and diapers and food and stuff now. How do I stop, um, dealing with this temptation to go risk freedom for it? It was worth it. Like, I mean, just to be clear, it'd be worth me risking my freedom to take care of this girl. Um, and but she gave me the opportunity to say like, hey, like, try something a little different. So she's like, you can live with me for a while if you need to. So me, my daughter, and my girlfriend at the time, went out to Massachusetts and started a new life. And turned out that like I was able to get a job fairly quickly in December 2007. and I still work for that same company today, which people are like, you know, almost 17 years later. I still work for the same company, and I started as a entry level position, and now I'm the one of the vice presidents of the company, and that's been a long journey, but that's just one of those other examples of like the percentages of that happening for me, and making it out of that to do these things is insane, and I have to try to use it to the benefit of others.
January 11th, 2017 is when you choose a life of sobriety and you get into fitness and veganism and running and all sorts of fun stuff.
Yeah.
Looking back on that date, what was the difference maker? Drinking all those years, I'm sure you had many days where you thought, this is the end. I'm going to be done. I'm going to choose a new life. Why was January 11th special? And what made you actually choose to stop?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like like the farther you go down like the addiction like road and like life, it gets really dark. Like when you first start drinking, everything's kind of fun, and even if you have a couple bad nights or whatever, or bad mornings because you're hungover or whatever, like those are just like kind of like short term, quick little like moments in life. But the farther you go down that road and you realize you can't stop, and it's just like it has power over you, it can get really dark and lonely. And even if you're around everyone that loves you, you isolate yourself mentally or physically. And it was just a tough time for me. And um, I tried to like stop or slow down or be normal. Like, some people can drink like on the weekends only, and they only drink a couple, one or two beers or something every now and then, or wine. I wasn't that person, and I wasn't able to do that. And I tried many times, and it was just so defeating. And um, I just felt like almost every day, to the point where I was like, felt like I was taking a loss, taking an L every day. And that does a lot to your like your your confidence, your psyche, your belief about whether you deserve to be alive or not. It was just a dark, dark time for me. And my mom like had messaged me randomly at like she texted me at the right time for some reason. She's like, "Hey, how's my son?" You know, and she would do that every now and then, and I was always like, "Oh, I'm fine, great." You'd make up the whole thing. One day she caught me at the wrong moment, and I was like, not so good. And so she referred me to this like most employees or companies have like an employee assistance program, where it's like you can talk to a person like as like a third party, and they'll kind of like refer you to what you could do next. And so this person called me. I reached out to my HR. This person called, like it's like a separate company, and for all these years, like you go to the doctor with high blood pressure and all these things, and they ask you like how many times you drink, that thing. And I would always say like, oh, like, maybe 3 4 times a week, and maybe like 1 2 or 3 beers here and there, like you kind of like you obviously lie through your teeth every time. And this lady on the phone from this employee assistance program was like, how many times do you drink? I said 7 days. And that was the first step to telling the truth. And then the second question was like, okay, well, how many drinks do you drink a day? And I was like, then I told her the truth again, and I'm like, I don't know, I just drink all day long. And she's like, okay. And then she referred me. They hooked it up where I went to a therapist. And she was like, I think it was like the 8th of January. And I was just in this moment of like, you caught me at the right time. I'm just gonna tell the truth for once about this thing. And the truth will set you free thing was like the truth for me in this moment. And so they scheduled it, and on the morning, oh, it was actually on the 8th, on the 11th. I'm sorry. So this was like on the 8th. They did it right away because I told her like what I was feeling about myself. And on the 11th or on the 10th at like 11:50 something at night, like I finished this like drink, and I was like, okay, I'm not gonna drink anymore because I don't want to be drunk or smell like alcohol going into this meeting with this therapist. And she turned out to be a substance abuse counselor, and then also like a family like a family counselor as well, um and so I walked into her office, and I continued to tell the truth about where I was, in life, and then also when it came to like my relationship with alcohol. And she referred me to Alcoholics Anonymous. And she's like, I have a person that I can introduce you to who goes to the Sunday meetings, and you can go along with him if you want. He's a cool guy. So I was like, sure, I'm willing to do that because I want to change too. 'Cause she was like, you definitely have a problem, and you could be an alcoholic, you know, and so I decided to not drink from that day, which was a Wednesday, the 11th, I think it was a Wednesday, and till Sunday. I'm like, okay, don't drink in between then, at least, because you want to be somewhat sober going into this meeting. And then I walked into this meeting on that Sunday, and I walked into a room full of people that, like, if you're not aware, I'm at this point 30, 32-year-old black guy from Detroit, you know, and I walk into this room that's like one of the suburbs of Detroit, and it's 40 something age white people to maybe 70, and they all had, like, I could tell by the cars, they all had decent money. I'm like, none of these people are going to know what I'm talking about. They just won't. And then before it got to my turn to share and say, like, hi, I'm Thomas, you know, I got to a point where, like, everyone in the room was telling their own story, not talking to me, but just talking about what they were there for, and all that, and their thoughts. And each person sounded like was repeating things that I thought already, you know? And I'm like, holy crap, like, these are my people. You know what I'm saying? And so that's why as soon as I started running and I had the opportunity in this platform to start sharing, that's why I feel like it's so important for me to share honestly and respectfully and safely, because I can't share everything, because it doesn't apply, and it's probably more harmful than anything. But whenever I can share that makes sense and can be helpful, that's why I think it's so important. Because if those people shared in, like, some weird, like, oh, I'm sober and I'll do it, it's so easy and I don't think about this, I don't think about that, then I would have probably just been like, well, not for me, and I probably would be still an alcoholic. Well, I am an alcoholic, but I'm not practicing, you know. I don't drink or smoke or do anything anymore, and I haven't for like 7 years and some change. um but if they didn't share openly and honestly, I'd still be where I am, so, or where I was. So that's why it's so important for me to share openly and honestly, and be valuable, because that saved my life that day. I mean, obviously the telling the truth part was cool, that on the 11th, but that day of hearing other people share openly and honestly and respectfully saved my life. And then I started going to the gym for a year and got, like, buff. And then after that, I a year later or so, I got invited to run a half marathon, the rock and roll half, and that was like my introduction to, like, running for real. And it was um it was just great. Like, that day was amazing. It didn't hit the time that I wanted to, but it was like the fact that I started this race and finished it. It was like a culmination of, like, that whole year that had passed, you know.
Fast forward to present day ish, going back
Hmm.
to this past February, Tokyo Marathon. Either that or
Hmm.
the Osaka Marathon, both in
Both.
Japan. So
Yeah.
close enough. I know you did both, but there was one in particular that you ran. I want to say it was the day of your father's passing, and it was the first year that you were older than him. So when he had
Yeah.
his stroke, you were older than him. Take me through that experience, and you know, just what was it like? Was it powerful? And with
Yes.
all everything in
So
context.
like, as you can imagine, like, so from 8 years old, I was like, my dad's death was very prevalent, like, in my, like, life, because I mean, it just, to me, it tied everything. That's what framed everything. That's caused all this stuff. Like, that was the domino or whatever effect. So, like, it the day that I ran Osaka Marathon, which was February 25th. Our birthdays are only 5 days apart. So I always knew, like, from, like, teenage years, I always knew that on the 24th of February 2024, I knew that I'd be the same age to the day he was the day he died, because he died on February 19th, 1993. So I knew on this day I would be the same age as him. And it's weird that you do that with your mind, and what, like, why does that matter? But that mattered to me. Like, I'll never make it to that day. So that's a crazy day. But I got invited to run the Osaka Marathon with Mizuno, and I didn't really place it yet. And all of a sudden, like, as I got closer to him, like, wait a minute, like, that's the day I've been thinking about. Like, I'll be there that day. And then the next day, the very next day after, we'd be the same age to the day of his passing, the very next day that I would have officially made it more days on this planet than him, I am running a marathon on the other side of the planet, you know? And it was just like, I'm doing this for him. I'm going to run this marathon for him. And because obviously, fast forward, how many ever years to the day, he wasn't alive, at that point. So like, I'm gonna run this for him because he'd want me to. And it was such an amazing like process. I shared a lot of the story, so the people at Mizuno that had invited me, they didn't know that this was happening until like I started sharing more about it as we got closer, and they like literally leaned into it and was like, you could tell they were like helping me through without saying it, that you could just tell that they were very like aware that I was working through something. And my mom was there for for both marathons, so she was in Japan with me. We shared rooms, we had double beds, and it was great, and it was really cool to have her alongside of that process. And I ran that race, and I don't normally think about too much outside of the race. When I'm running a marathon, every now and then I'll think about my kids, like push through because they'd want you to, like try to do that type of thing. But I thought about him a lot during that race, which was heavy, and it was a lot for me to handle, but it was like what I needed. And I crossed the finish line, and because Mizuno's so great, I mean they it was their race, so they were the sponsor, but they gave my mom a staff pass, so she was on the opposite side, like as you come through the finishing chute. So I saw her while I was finishing the race, but then she had a staff pass, so she was able to like swing around and then like greet me on the other side where most people aren't allowed into, like where they hand you the medals. Like, so I'm hugging my mom before I even got my medal because like she was that close to the finish line,
That's
and
amazing.
like I let out this cry, bro. That like it felt like I let something go in Osaka. Like I'll always grieve the passing of my dad. I'll always wish that he was here, and I'll always probably be sad when like a father figure dies in a movie because like I like for a long time I couldn't even watch certain movies because like I can't deal with this. But I always have that feeling. But I left like the negative like thing behind because he was this like shadow in my like he was like this large figure like overshadowing my whole life until that point. I feel like because I always compared myself to maybe where he was at this point. And Osaka was such a special time. I felt like I left something in the best way possible in Japan because of that race. And um, I think that I'll never forget that day.
Tommy, I always tell guests who approach the hour mark, I say, once we get to an hour, it means two things. One is a good conversation if we made it that far.
Or
But
I talk a
two,
lot.
no, it was a good conversation. But two, because it's an hour, generally for me, I mean, Joe Rogan has like 3 hour podcasts. I don't know how people listen to him, but like I'm the type of guy that's like an hour podcast, perfect timing. So what I always tell the
Mhm.
guests, if you made it to an hour, just means I have to get you back on. So wrapping up
Yeah.
edition one of our conversation with each other, I'll get you back on in the future. What would be the final takeaway message you want to leave with our audience today?
You can do this too. Not the pace or whatever, but you can change your life or improve your life whenever you decide, because everything that happens in your life is up to you. You get to decide how you respond to bad situations and good situations. You get to decide whether you partake in negative or positive things in your life. You literally design your life. So anything that I've ever I said, that whether I changed my life from an alcoholic that was like, at the bottom of the barrel to on an amazing podcast, and reached an hour for a good conversation. If I could do that, you can do whatever the version is for you.
Tommy, final question I ask every single guest on every single podcast. If you had Gordon Ramsay coming over to your house for dinner, what would you personally choose to make for him?
Make for him?
Chef Tommy. Chef Runs, they call him.
Yeah, I used to cook a lot too. I used to actually cook a lot of his recipes back in the day. Like I
Oh,
used to
really?
watch him on YouTube, and then like I used to be a big time like into cooking and stuff. And I'd make, what I'd make Gordon Ramsay. I'd make Gordon Ramsay a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Just slice it,
Hey,
slice it diagonally, sit down, and then just have, because I think that he likes normal food too. So like I'd make him a peanut butter and jelly sandwich and just kick it at the table.
hey, I wouldn't put it past you to do it successfully. You've done so much in your life,
Yeah.
Tommy. Really appreciate the conversation. It personally impacted me. I know it's going to impact the thousands who listen. So thank you for your testimony and the ways in which you're making the world a better place through all that you do, all that you say. Keep crushing it, and we'll run it back on the podcast soon.
Appreciate you, man. Thank you.